You're very welcome along to the Matchbook Cheltenham Trail. I think I heard a rumor 6 weeks to go to the Cheltenham Festival, which is outrageously close, but we're very much looking forward to it. I'm your host, Daniel Hussey. Delighted to be joined each and every week, Matt Toombs and Donn McClean, where we review the weekend's racing, but also take a look at a Cheltenham Festival race and, of course, the ever popular Eyecatcher section. And it was an eventful Saturday at Cheltenham. We'll get to all that. But before we get going, if you haven't got a Matchbook account and you basically like having a bet on the horses, you can check out the Matchbook betting exchange. You'll be invariably getting best price on the odds checker grid right up until 5, 10, 15 minutes, an hour or two before the race. You can enter the bonus code POD50, POD50, and get £50 worth in free bets when you bet £50. Full T's and C's available on screen now. So yeah, we'll start with the International Hurdle, Matt, and obviously we have to start with Sergino. Down the back straight, looked like something went wrong, was touch and go for a while. Great to see he's going to be okay, touch wood. What did you make of the race itself and maybe the New Lions' prospects for the Champion Hurdle?
Yeah, they're very sad about Sergino. Like a lot of injuries, pelvic injuries can vary from sort of not too bad to life-threatening. The one positive is I have seen plenty of horses come back from fracturing their pelvis with much of their ability intact. One of my favourite horses of yesteryear, Relkill, won this race 3 times after fracturing his pelvis. So hopefully Sergino will be back, but he won't be running in this year's Champion Hurdle, sadly. This was only the 3rd renewal since it was moved from December. The long-term trend is that since Catchit won the Champion Hurdle in 2008, runners 0 from 36, including 10 winners. As ever with trends, you need to be confident that the inherent nature of the races remains pretty much the same if you're going to use those trends. And the 2 winners since it was moved to the meeting, Lossiemouth bolted up in the Mayor's Hurdle, Constitution Hill went off 1.5 in the Champion Hurdle last year. So the race is now in the ideal spot in the calendar. I'd expect it to be a much better festival guide going forward. So don't be put off by that negative trend. And they dawdled round, and a bit of a non-event, rather silly finishing speed, nearly 120%. And in bare form terms, the New Lion doesn't even come out the best horse, beating the Nemean Lion, length and a half, getting £3. You can pretty much ignore the bare form. And after his antics in Newcastle, he looked like he might duck out. They understandably didn't want to make the running with the New Lion, albeit he didn't get the cover they wanted with only 3 runners against him. He did quicken up best here, but he'd want to against the 2 opponents he had at the business end. And visually, to me, he doesn't look a horse with an instant burst of acceleration. He takes time to quicken. For a few seconds before and after the last, I thought he might not get there. So if that's right, he's not going to be an easy tactical ride in the Champion Hurdle. They don't want to risk leading if the pace is too steady for him, in which scenario he's likely to get done for toe. And the Skelton team probably hoping brighter days ahead runs and Jigginsdown try and make it a real galloping test. I think that scenario might well see the New Lion to best effect. And the Skeltons did say afterwards the priority was a clear round, and Harry was deliberately cautious at the obstacles, so the New Lion got his confidence boosted. Ken Pitterson did say he was carrying a bit of condition, so should improve for the run. That's definitely a positive. But ideally, the confidence booster would have occurred earlier in the season, and then you could have had this as a prep run where they let him race like a Champion Hurdle horse. I just wonder if he'll be quite battle-hardened enough for the big race this year. And assuming Lossiemouth runs in the Mayor's Hurdle, the New Lion, who's currently 4.3, looks the most likely favourite on the day. My hunch is I want to take him on.
Yeah, Donn, do you concur with that? That ultimately we will get to March and the New Lion will go off favourite for the Champion Hurdle?
Yeah, it's possible, Dan. Like the Champion Hurdle picture, it just keeps on getting more and more flimsy, doesn't it?
Like, how did we end up here, you know?
Yeah. William Money's out, Sergino's obviously out, and that was even like watching the race live. I definitely feared the worst because you saw him going wrong and thought that could have been curtains for the horse. So thank God he's survived it. Not going to see him again this season now, but we might see him racing again. But it's such a shame. He's such a talented, obviously, horse, and yeah, it was really awful to see it happening. But good that the news afterwards is as good as you could have hoped, I think. And good that he's got a chance at least of coming back racing. So, and he's only 6, so he's still got time on the side. And as Matt said, then it can be done. They can recover from pelvic injuries, so that's a positive. The New Line, yeah, I would have taken plenty of positives, or did take plenty of positives out of the New Line's performance. Like as Matt said, that they went no gallop. The finishing time was actually over 13 seconds slower than the Finesse Hurdle was. We'll come on to the Finesse Hurdle, the Juveniles Hurdle, but 13 seconds. It just shows you how slowly they went early on. And the new line, like the pace was the big question that he had to answer. And I think he answered it pretty well here. Like his last 4 furlongs were all around 13 seconds. He picked up well. You could see it as well visually on the far side, probably not on the best of the ground. And the main line, like he's a decent, honest to God horse, 151 rated horse. And he had the run of the race insofar as there was a run of the race going. And the new line quickened up well, got up and he only won by a length and a half in the end. But yeah, I fully agree with Matt on that. The bare form of the race is not really a thing here. But he's still he's lightly raced horse. It's only his second run out of novice company. You can see that they were playing defensively in order to get him round and ride him like that. And then the fact that he was able to quicken up and beat the main line and Brentford Hope, that was all positive, because going to the last, you weren't certain if he was going to be able to do that, if he was going to be able to quicken up off a sedate pace and beat the horses who were better positioned than he was in the race, good horses as well. So I think lots of positives for the main line out of this. Whether he can go and win a Champion Hurdle now, yeah, like he's always been short for the Champion Hurdle. Like he was favourite after he won the Bearing Bingham last year for the Champion Hurdle, and he's always been tight, priced up defensively. We'll know an awful lot more now after the weekend where with Lossy Out and Brighter Days Ahead, as in A, how they fare, and B, we might get more clarity as to what their respective targets are. But it is interesting the King of Kingsfield is entered in the Irish Champion Hurdle as well by Gordon Elliott and Jigginstown House. So he's been running over fences all season, but he was the one who set the pace from Brighter Days Ahead, won the December Hurdle last season by 30 lengths. So if he runs now on Sunday, and if Brighter Days Ahead goes well or happens to beat Lossy Mouth, then that would all go well. And fully agree with Matt that if that is the case in the Champion Hurdle, then that would be a positive for the new line as well.
Okay, ever muddied Champion Hurdle picture for sure, and we'll be previewing that some way down the line post DRF for sure. And actually stay tuned, we're going to be previewing the Stayers Hurdle later in the show as well. I should have mentioned that as well. So Matt, hit us with your trend for the Limestone Lad Hurdle and Carbo. A short price favourite for Willie Mullins was beat.
Yeah, that's right. Since it became a graded race in 2011, runners 4th and 25 at the festival, 26.102% profit. The 4 winners split between the Champion Mares, Stayers Hurdle and the Coral Cup. One of those grade 3s, a bit like the Kleine we covered a couple of weeks ago, that tend to get underrated. And a fantastic result here with the Bows Glenkiln winning the race, named after their great Limestone Lad. And he made all to boot, as Limestone Lad did so often. He did have a big fitness advantage here after 5 runs, while his 4 realistic rivals all making belated seasonal debuts. Brian Hayes set out to make that advantage count. And for a horse who's unseated twice in those 5 starts, jumping was really quick. Thought it was a good ride, judging the fractions well. And for those of us who were formative racing years, we're in an era where quite a few of the star horses were in small yards. A wonderful feeling of nostalgia here. I think he's likely to be a bit part player at grade 1 level, but he's good enough at this sort of level and should continue to be a real credit to Connections. Michael Bowes' initial reaction afterwards was to target the Aintree Hurdle. That might be flying a bit high, but if he shows up, there'll be part of me cheering on him, regardless of whoever I end up backing. Given that he ran in the Supreme and Top Novices last season, Carbo's a horse who's gone under the radar a bit. This was a good reappearance against a hard-fit rival who would have been primed for this. Came on a lot for his seasonal reappearance last season, so every reason to think he can do so again. He's rated 146 in Ireland, so might be about 150 if entered in the county or the Coral Cup. Last season, Willie won the Coral Cup with a seasonal debutant in Jimmy DeSoy, and the county with Cargisi, who had just 1 run in mid-January. So with his training methods seemingly becoming ever more spring-focused, horses like Carbo are well worth keeping an eye on for the spring festival handicaps. And last season work ahead, well fancied for the Supreme after slamming William Money in a maiden at Leopardstown at Christmas. He went out like a light at Cheltenham, been off with injury since. Vibes where he'd need this. He got tired from the last. He's entered in the Champion Hurdle. It'll be interesting to see what Henry does now. Red Mills at Goran on February the 14th would look a stepping stone. Didn't look to have too hard a race here, so you'd hope he wouldn't bounce. I know Donn likes him, so I'll let him talk more about him, but he's definitely a horse to keep an eye on.
Yeah, Donn, over to you.
Yeah, brilliant results, Dan, for racing. Like Glenkiln for the Bow family in more or less the Limestone Lad colours in the Limestone Lad race. even Brian Hayes saying afterwards that as soon as he finished second in the Punchestown race behind Alfabiola last time, they said Limestone Lad Hurdle, that's where they're going to go. And he's not normally a front runner, Glenkiln, which is interesting. Limestone Lad obviously he was a tearaway or a clear break on his rival's front runner. Glenkiln normally isn't, but that was obviously the plan Brian Hayes set out with that express objective. And his jumping was super. Like he didn't miss one. He was long at a few of them. Brian Hayes asked him, and he picked up, and he pinged nearly every single flight. And he only won by a length in the end from Carbo. That could have been the difference between winning and losing. Plus his resolution. Like when Carbo came up on the outside over the last, it looked like he was traveling better and that he would go past him. But Glenkiln, he like that from that family, the Limestone Lad family, Sweet Kiln, all that Bow family. They have that attitude and that resolution, and he just battled on well up the hill. And it was brilliant to see. Just chatting to Michael Bow afterwards, he said it himself afterwards. He could hardly speak, like the emotion and what this means. He was so nervous watching his horse race, and from to go and win it and win the Limestone Lad Hurdle, it was just brilliant. And some months for Brian Hayes as well. He had that treble at Navan there last Saturday. Of course, he's got married earlier in the month as well, so it's a hell of a month for him. And he gave this horse a great ride. Carbo, it was his first run since he finished third in the KPMG Champion Novices Hurdle at the Punchestown Festival back in April, and he was strong in the market. He ran well, just couldn't get past a horse who had absolute race fitness on his side, who'd been primed for the race. He was a talented horse as well. So I thought it was a good run. And Matt's points about maybe a handicap at Cheltenham. That's interesting. He's a lightly raced horse. He's only had 6 runs over hurdles. He's a 6-year-old, so could be more to come from him. He could come forward from this. Glenkiln, interesting. The Aintree Hurdle I did mention, they're talking about going chasing within the next season, please God, as well. So, and he's such a good jumper, he'd be really interesting over fences next year. Farron Glory, I thought ran well to a point. He was weak in the market, and it was his first run since February. He does go well fresh though. His 4 runs after a break of 100 days or more. He's won twice and finished second twice. But he ran well to a point. I think he can probably come forward from this. That certainly his weakness in the market suggests he would. Like he's a Royal Bond Hurdle winner from a couple of seasons ago, and then he fell at the second last flight in the Formby Hurdle at Aintree. That's the race that Django Bay won. Django Bay, of course, the Oracle winner and big Gold Cup player, as we've discussed before. So Farron Glory, again, another horse. He's 9 years old now, but he's still only had 7 runs over hurdles, so he's lightly raced, and there could be a little bit more to come from him. And Work Ahead, he's actually one of my eye catchers for the week. I thought he ran well to a point. He was weak in the market beforehand. His first run since Cheltenham, when he ran no kind of race in the Supreme Novices Hurdle, which was surprising, and I never didn't hear or didn't read anything afterwards about why that might have been. Obviously it just wasn't his running, and he's been off since then until now. He's another horse who was weak in the market. He was put in quite short, which you can understand. That run in the maiden hurdle that he won at the Christmas Festival at Leopardstown last season, that was a massive run. Like he beat William Money and beat him really well. He came right away. I think he won by 7 lengths in the end. He had Sprink de la Mer behind him in third. Sprink de la Mer came out and won his next 2 races over fences. Redemption Day was back and forth, a Grade 1 winner as well. So that was a really good performance. William Money, of course, went on and won 2 runs later, and then finished second at the Cheltenham Festival in the Supreme Novices Hurdle, in which Work Ahead was well behind. But again, he's 8 years old now, but another lightly raced horse for his age. This is only his 4th run over hurdles, and it will be interesting to see where he goes next. The Red Mills Hurdle, as Matt said, it's an option. I'm not a massive fan of the Red Mills as a stepping stone to Cheltenham. That's just a personal thing. I just think it comes up quite soon before Cheltenham. And I prefer, if Work Ahead is going to go to Cheltenham, I prefer to see him going straight there now and going there a fresh horse. So, but I think wherever he goes next, Work Ahead, there's more to come from him.
Okay, Work Ahead first of Donn's Eyecatchers. Let's go to the Cotswold, Matt, and the race itself. Spillans Tower, great to see him back winning a big race like that. As you went by, I thought he'd win by further, which was maybe slightly disappointing, but you can analyse that. But was Grey Dawning coming with a run before that mistake? It just felt he might stay up, albeit there might have been warning signs before that.
Yeah, as you say, quite a lot to pick out here, Daniel, on the basis that we only had 4 runners and one of them was having a run round at the back. The trend is that since Looks Like Trouble did the double in 2000, runners from renewals at Cheltenham, 0 from 53, including 14 winners, but only 7 of those 53 gone off single-figure prices in March. Modern training methods mean that lots of trainers are reluctant to run their Gold Cup horses over what, with the doling out this year, just 8 yards short of the full Gold Cup trip, soft ground, less than 7 weeks before the Gold Cup. And the most interesting runner here was one you alluded to, Daniel, Grey Dawning. I'm still working out Dan Skelton's modus operandi with a championship level horse. He hasn't had many in the past. I mentioned Ken Pitterson had said the new Lion was carrying condition. I wonder if Grey Dawning was too. And I also wonder if Dan's going to operate, what do you call it, a Nicky Henderson style policy of backing off his horses between Christmas and their final prep runs, which they often won't cover themselves in glory, and then they improve hugely at the festival. After last year's Betfair Chase, or last season's Betfair Chase, that took the edge off Grey Dawning for the season. Dan's been at pains to avoid another slog, ridden very conservatively here. I suspect the Skelton team may not be that displeased he made that mistake 2 out. Meant he could coast home. And Dan said afterwards, I needed to run. I've trained him for the Gold Cup this year, and I'm not going to get to the 11th hour and forget it. We're happy with the fact that we've got a run under the belt. So is that the words of a trainer trying to look on the bright side of a disappointing run? Or is it an indication he was just blowing the cobwebs away half cooked? I'm open-minded. And looking at the bare form, he'd have no chance in the Gold Cup. But the vibes and the way on Saturday he drifted from 1.67 to 2.0 did suggest he might be a long way from his peak here. So I wouldn't rule him out of it from March. 26.0 looks a bit big, albeit, I think Django Bay and the Jukebox Man may have a bit too much for him. And Spillane Tower is getting £6 from both Grey Dawning and Long Presse. Still an excellent effort. His first run back over fences, had his ground here, skied a few early on. He did miss the last stitch, 6 out, but jumped well at the business end. And he apparently didn't take the travelling well when disappointing in last season's King George. So good to see that wasn't an issue here. He looked, as you said, Daniel, that he might win quite comfortably, but only 3/4 of a length in hand at the end. Does that make a question mark over his stamina for the Gold Cup? 21.0. 7 of the last 10 Gold Cups been run on officially good or good soft ground. 7 of the 10 have dipped below standard time. So you would be worried given how often they pulled him out on a sound surface. He's a dodgy Ante-Post proposition. And there's also the JP McManus factor. I know the way you're thinking bombs again on Saturday in the Irish Gold Cup. You might not even go to Cheltenham. His other Gold Cup entry, Iron Maximus, could prioritise the National. And in the Ryanair last year's winner, Factor File ran moderately last time. John Bond's a veteran. So a lot of moving pieces there for Spillane's Tower. But if he does get his ground at Cheltenham, I think he'd have a good chance, more so in the Ryanair. Watching brief on him for now. And Long Presse ran really well, especially given the stable's been so quiet. He got an easy lead. He was a bit leery in front. So perhaps they weren't able to go the sort of gallop that might have enabled him to run the finish out of the winner. He's every right to run the Gold Cup, but at 67.0, I'd say his odds reflect his chance.
Yeah, we might start with Grey Dawning with you, Don. The drift that Matt mentioned, I mean, sometimes these drifts, like the Ante-Post prices can be wrong. Therefore, a drift is probably exaggerated a little bit. But the drift actually went further out than 2.0, went out to 2.2-ish, 2.3, living off memory here from Saturday, just watching the markets. But it did come back late for 2.0. I think people looked at the form and thought Grey Dawning is a cracking bet at 2.0. It does beg the question, though, if Dan Skelton's just when not just a prep run, but leaving the horse short, then I guess punters have to adapt a bit like Nicky Henderson, as Matt touched on. But it is slightly frustrating that you look at the form, you think Grey Dawning's about a 2.0, but he's not quite at it 100%. Now, saying all that, as the question I led in to Matt was, I did think that mistake cost him. I did think he would have got a good bit closer than he ultimately did.
Yeah, look, it did cost him. It would have been interesting to see how he would have fared if he hadn't made that mistake. But everything's factored into the price. And that's for us to read.
Yeah.
But how close to peak fitness he's going to be for a Cotswold Chase when Dan Skelton has said the Gold Cup is his aim. And yeah, I'm certain this was a prep for the Gold Cup. Like, not that he wasn't trying or anything like that. If he goes and win it, so brilliant. But go and win it and bring him forward for the Gold Cup, or go and run well in defeat and bring him forward for the Gold Cup. It's his aim. And as Matt was saying, after the Betfair Chase last year, you can understand that's where they're going, and the Gold Cup's that's the race for which they want their horse to be a concert pitch. In common with pretty much everybody, they're building up towards it. It's the crescendo, it's the championship race, the blue ribbon of National Hunt Racing. So you can understand that if he was a concert pitch for a Cotswold Chase, and I'm not saying he wasn't, but if he was, it may be that he wouldn't be a concert pitch then for the Gold Cup, and you can understand that that's the way they're leading. That said, the mistake at the second last fence, I don't think it cost him the race though, Dan, really. I think Spillane's Tower won with a little bit in hand. Like he only won by 3/4 of a length in the end, but I just thought Jack Kennedy was holding on to plenty, and I thought he was always comfortable that he was getting to Long Presse, and once he got him, he just kept Spillane Star up to his work. Like I'd say, if you backed L'Impresse, you kind of knew, even though he was only a half a length or 2 parts of a length down on the run in, that he wasn't going to get there. And big run by L'Impresse in defeat. Brilliant for Jimmy Mangan. Great to see him with such a good horse. And yeah, like I was not saying, he's a kind of a forgotten horse, Spillane Star. Like, this is his first win since he won the Grade 1 Novices Chase at the Punchestown Festival back in 2024. And his 2 runs this season were over hurdles. He was sent off as favourite for the King George last year. Like that's the calibre of horse that he is, or that he was perceived as at the time after his brilliant novice chasing year. So, you know, he's 8 years old now, just turned 8, still plenty of time on his side. And yeah, like he needed to do something like this to throw himself into the Gold Cup picture again. And he's done it. To me, he's in the Gold Cup picture, but even Jimmy Mangan said afterwards he's going to have to improve an awful lot on the bare form of this run if he's going to be a Gold Cup player. And I agree with that, like beating L'Impresse, the 11-year-old L'Impresse, admirable character though he is, getting £6 from him. It's not a Gold Cup winning run, but I'm sure he will improve on this. And the stamina issue, it's an unknown. It's 3 miles, 2.5 furlongs, probably on soft ground or on easy ground if he's running. Jimmy Mangan even said afterwards that, you know, soft ground is important to him, or ground at least on the easy side of good. So that's going to take a lot of getting. It's going to stretch him. He's going to have to prove that something that he hasn't proved before, like the when he won at Punchestown, that's 3 miles and a furlong on yielding ground at Punchestown. 3 miles, 2.5 furlongs at Cheltenham up the final incline. It's a whole different ball game. But I think he's definitely worth his place in the Gold Cup picture now. Florian Porter, good to see him back. It was his first run since he won the Kerry National in September 2024, and like he's a dual Stayers Hurdle winner, finished second in the Stayers Hurdle in 2024 as well. He's talented. He's 11 years old now, and I think Gavin Cromwell said that they're targeting the Grand National, which is why he had to run in this race over fences. But yeah, good to see him. Good to see him back.
Okay, yeah, fascinating how that goes. And yes, Spillane Tower, the excitement for him during his novice chase campaign was brilliant. And I actually completely forgot he went off favourite in that King George. So that is wild. So hopefully we see him. Yeah, that's crazy. Yorkshire Rose Mares Hurdle. This is a great story. Donn, Paul Nolan, and Sean O'Keefe combining for a great couple of winners. I mean, let's start with Feet of a Dancer. It was such a confident ride from Sean, and it was just. Some races, like I know betting races, some races are just great to watch, and you're just, you know, Sean's holding on to enough horse, but at the same time you're like, oh, personally I'd go now, Sean. But you know, I think that's what makes horse racing great. And Sean timed it to a T. To be honest, he timed it to perfection, to be fair to him, and she won. Yeah. And I thought she won very cozy in the end. But you know, those races where you're, oh my god, if you missed this last hurdle, you are under massive pressure, Sean. But it was a confident ride and a great double in Doncaster.
Yeah, no, brilliant for Paul Nolan and Sean O'Keefe. And I think he'd only had one ride at Doncaster before this, and he went over for 2 rides and won on both of them. And watching him, totally agree, Dan, watching him ride in the race, you'd think he was born beside Doncaster and was riding there all his life, because we'll come on to the Devil You Know later on, but he went around the inside early on in the Devil You Know and then took him towards the outside before he on the run around the home turn. Feet of a Dancer, she was wide throughout. And she's such a talented mare, soft ground, 3 miles. That seems to be her optimum. And she's a different mare. Seems to be a different mare this season to the one she was last season. Like she wasn't beaten that far by Woodrow in her last run at the Leopardstown Christmas Festival. She won the Greybull Hurdle the time before that at Punchestown. And last year at the Cheltenham Festival, she went into plenty of notebooks in the Pretemps final when she came from a fair way back in a race in which the pace held up well and which prominent races were probably favoured. So, but she looks like an improved mare this season. Again, she's only just turned 7, and yeah, just stalking in behind Dream On Baby. She ran a big race as well. Emmett Mullins' mare. And Emmett Mullins, another man who was fairly adept at going over and picking up prizes in Britain with a kind of a rifle approach, as in a tailored approach. He went over to Kempton. She was one of 2 horses who went to Kempton there in November, and with 2 runners, and both of them won as well. And she ran a big race, probably on ground that's too soft for her. I would have thought Dream On Baby is probably a mare who's better on better ground, and at Doncaster, there's a good chance you're going to get better ground, but obviously not with the weather we've been having on both sides of the RSC for the last week or two. She ran well in defeat, but Feet of a Dancer was really good. She was pretty well supported as well. Jatara completing a 1-2-3 for Irish trainers, and Feet of a Dancer. It's just going to be interesting to see where she's going to go now, because she kind of falls between about 3 stools. The Pretemps probably too good for Pretemps. Stayers Hurdle, like she's rated in the 140s. She'll get the mare's allowance tip as 162 or 164. So she's got to improve a lot again to be a Stayers Hurdle contender. The mare's hurdle is probably the race for her at the Cheltenham Festival. It's just over 2.5 miles, not 3 miles. And while she can be effective over 2.5, I think 3 miles is probably her best trip. She stays it well on soft ground. If the ground did come up soft for a mare's hurdle, that would obviously help her because she'd have her ground and it would place a premium on stamina over the trip. But like you wouldn't be surprised if she went for the mare's hurdle and if she was a player in the race. But I think she'd probably prefer a little bit further, and I think her chance in that would be enhanced by soft ground.
Yeah, the 3 stills, I didn't forgot about the Pretems. Yeah, she could still go for the Pretems, couldn't she? Yeah. Matt, your thoughts on it? Yeah, I was between 2 stills, still don't mention the Pretems. Yeah, as Paul Nolan touched on himself, she's caught between, say, the graded races, the Stayers. She's probably below that level, though. Like Paul said, 1.5 stone. Percy, I think maybe a little bit closer than that. But the second bit is the mares. I mean, if Lossiemouth, etc., go for the mares, then she's not going to win that, is she?
Yeah, it's going to be tough. I think Paul said in the autumn he didn't want her carrying a big weight in the Pretems. She'd have 11.3 in the Stayers, 11.5 in the mares, whereas she could end up virtually top weight the way the Pretems is. But she still could go to Naas for the qualifier there next month. We'll see. It might be that he will look at it and think, as you say, it's just a step too far on the Stayers Hurdle. I, like you, Daniel, I don't think it's 1.5 stones. You know, Thistlecrack's the last Stayers Hurdle winner to run to an RPR higher than 168. Bob Wallinger was 166 last year. If she was rated 141 here in Britain, probably run to a bit better than that. You add the £7 mares allowance, probably run to a gelding rating in the low 150s. So maybe 1 stone to find. But as Paul Nolan said, you get some funny results in the Stayers. The mares race, I agree with Donn that ideally 3 miles is her trip. Not a slog at 3 miles, but 3 miles, but soft ground over the 2.5 on the new course, then perhaps she would have some sort of chance. But Lossiemouth and Wadhoo do look to set a very high standard, and Wadhoo did batter out of the way, giving her weight very easily at Christmas. So I think it was a really taking, likeable performance. She's a very likeable mare. Definitely agree with Donn about Sean O'Keefe rode these 2 races that we're going to cover really well at Doncaster, the way he went, and a lot of them were down the inside for the entire time on the worst of the ground. So, yeah, like her, but I think 51.0 for the Stayers is probably about right. Dream On Baby, she was off levels here rather than conceding £3 as she was at Leopardstown at Christmas, but she never really looked like turning the tables, and she's one who had gone down the inside whilst the winner was wide. So maybe she can be marked up a little bit for that. She's probably best at intermediate trips. 34.0 for the mare's hurdle. Worth noting, though, she's been on the go a long time. Whether Emmett can get her to another peak in March would be a good training performance, even by his standards. But they pulled 7 lengths clear of Chitara. Now, she may not be in the same form this season, but given it wasn't run out of tempo to string them out, they're good performances in the first 2, albeit they probably do look grade 2 rather than grade 1 performers.
Yeah, fascinating targets wise. We nearly need to do a show on, say, 20 horses who are in between targets, the advantages, disadvantages, because I thoroughly enjoyed that last couple of minutes.
About 50.
Yeah, exactly. That's a production.
Sure, we get most of them wrong, mind you.
Yeah,
true.
Can you imagine we get 20 and get them all wrong?
Yeah, exactly. So that's a production meeting. Your listener and viewers have a bit of an insight into some of our production meetings there. But we'll move on to Naas Novice Chase, and we'll start with you, Donn, on this because you want to talk about Argento Boy.
Yeah, he was good, Dan. He's a horse who is probably a better chaser than hurdler now. It's only his 3rd run over fences. He won at Punchestown on his previous run when Ballygunner Castle fell and brought down Slade Seal. They were the 2 main, the 2 protagonists in the market. So his task was definitely simplified. And during that race, he kind of made a mistake at the fence in front of the stands. And Danny Mullins, who rode him that day, brought him towards the outside. And his jumping was better when he was going down the outside. He had a little bit of a look at the final fence. This is in the Punchestown race. And just kind of maybe was idling or whatever. But then once Danny Mullins got him going forward, he was good over the last. And he won well that day. He was sent off favourite, just about favourite yesterday. And it was a real staying performance by him. They changed the configuration of Naas yesterday because of the soft ground. They actually put the They put the finish of the chase course inside the hurdles course, which is kind of unusual. So they went around the outside, the normal chase course in over whatever 3/4 of the circuit, and then they cut inside the hurdles track for the finish, with the result that there was only one fence in the home straight, not two, which made it a real stamina test. And I suppose probably similar to when fences are omitted because of a low sun. There was no fence between the home turn and the lasts, which is it's a long run between from the home turn to the final fence at Naas. And he and Boss of the Brownies got into a good battle. Boss of the Brownies, such a likable horse, and Mouse Morris's real staying type of horse, and he gave Argento Boy a good race. It always looked like Argento Boy was getting the better of him, though. Like once Paul Townend went for him, he got the better of him, and he was retaining his advantage all the way up the hill to the line. He won by 2.5 lengths in the end. So, like he's a horse who can continue to improve over fences. Even talking to Willie Mullins after the Punchestown race, he just kind of said that he just felt that he hadn't really got to his full potential yet, and he's just even mentally that he's just kind of getting there. But he was very good. His jumping was good yesterday, and yeah, he should be able to go on from this. David Casey said afterwards that he kind of mentioned the Irish National as a potential, and that makes lots of sense. It's a real staying trip. Like this fella, he competed in the top Grade 1 novice hurdles last season over 3 miles. The Sefton Hurdley round, the Albert Bartlett Hurdley round, the champion novices hurdle at the Punchestown Festival over 3 miles. So he was a stamina novice hurdler and stamina now over fences. It was 3.5 miles furlong yesterday. He could be even better if he goes out to those extreme trips like the Bet365 Gold Cup, the Irish Grand National. Those types of races should suit him really well. And as such, he could be a National Hunt Chase horse. Obviously, it's a handicap now. So, and I think he has to run. He has to run again. I think you need 4. Matt, you might correct me on this. And I think you need 4 runs over fences before you can run in that race. Or maybe that's just for the open handicaps. But anyway, he's got options, and stamina is going to be his forte wherever he goes next. Boss of the Brownies ran really well. It's only his 4th run over fences as well. He didn't win over hurdles. He had 7 attempts, didn't win any of them. He won earlier on the season over fences. He finished 3rd behind Flicker of Hope, with whom he reversed places yesterday. Flicker of Hope just didn't run his race. Maybe the race came up too quickly after his last race, when he was impressive and winning over the same course and distance. But Boss of the Brownies probably stepped forward from that. He had a good race in the Florida Pearl Chase as well, when he finished 3rd behind Oscar's brother. So he's another horse who, he's got a rating of 136. He'd be of interest as well, maybe more so in handicaps than in the graded novice chases. And the Enabler, I thought the Enabler travelled really well into his race and didn't find as much as it looked like he would find. I always had him down as a stair. He won at Fairyhouse over 2 miles and 5 furlongs. Then he finished 4th in the race that Capagy Pike won at Punchestown last time, the Grade 3 race, over 2 miles and 3.5. And I thought the drop down and trip would be a negative for him. I thought stepping back up to 3 miles yesterday would bring about further improvement from him. But he just he looks like a stayer. He's a Gordon Elliott Jigginstown House horse who you think should stay, but yesterday just didn't seem to get home. And maybe there was something else at play, but he seemed to be outstayed by Argento Boy and Boss of the Brownies. But I'll just be interested to see. I wouldn't give up on him yet as a staying chaser. I would be interested to see where he can go next, because he travelled so well into his race and he's won over 2 miles 5. So you'd think the 3 miles should be within his compass, but he's just a bit disappointing yesterday for whatever reason. The Great Nudie, she ran well for a long way. She led. She'd won over 2.5 miles. Actually, on the same day on which Flicker of Hope and Boss of the Brownies ran, and she won impressively over 2.5. She's a point-to-point winner of Colin Bowes. She's shaped like she'd stay 3 miles, but again, I think stamina probably caught her out. And yeah, I'd be interested in the Great Nudie back, maybe over an intermediate trip over 2.5 miles.
Okay, Matt, long way to go, or lot ways we can go here. Obviously, you're going to hit us with your trend, the Enablers, one of your mates from the past, to see if he's potentially still a Cheltenham prospect. But it's 3 runs, is it, you were saying, for the National Hunt Chase?
Yeah, that's right. 3 runs, as Don was alluding to, in the novice races, 4 in the open handicap chases, and 5 in the open hurdles. The betting at this as an open contest, it was actually one for those who follow big race entries, because the only 2 horses entered in the race. This was designed as a trial for the Broadway, fought out the finish a long way clear. But it hasn't been a good trial. Runners 0 from 11 in the Broadway, including 6 winners. Only one of those 11 was placed. And runners overall, the festival 1 from 48. Statler won the old level weights 4 miler. So Argento Boy, I thought he looked a little bit quirky previously. Thought he knuckled down a bit better here. Looked a bit more resolute in the finish. But I'm still not sure he wouldn't be better with a bit of headgear. As Don was saying, I think something like the Irish National might be the race for him. The National Hunt Chase, the problem with that, he was given an Irish mark this morning of 144. So you've got a 145 ceiling in Britain. Just over £2 is the average rise. So he'd be right in the bubble of whether he'd be eligible or not. He's an interesting sort of horse, which way he's going to go from here, because he looks to have plenty of ability. Boss of the Brownies ran another really good race, reversed the form with Flicker of Hope from earlier in the month on £3 better terms. He was fairly ordinary over hurdles, maiden in 7 starts, much better over fences. Be interested to see what his target is now. He's 140 in Ireland, so he might be a more realistic National Hunt Chase contender. I suspect this is decent form. And yes, what do we make of the enabler? Like Donn, I'd seen him as a stayer. He moved sweetly, didn't he, as Donn was saying, and then he didn't find that much. So is that actually the wrong trip? And we've had a middle distance horse down as a stayer, or is that he's not that prime for it? He's been dropped £1 to 136, so he should have no problem getting into the Kim Muir. Be no surprise to see him there. He's one of those I'm in that quandary of following him for a while, just getting the feeling he's a little disappointing. But then when he wins, the coup happens and you haven't backed him, you feel particularly irritated.
Yeah, happens way too often, to be honest, and happens to us all, unfortunately. Don, we'll go to the Classic Novices Hurdle to conclude the Cheltenham card, which would normally, pique a bit of interest, but I got a lot more people talking than usual. I mean, firstly, who won the race? And we'll go from there, mate.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think Cryptic Jim won it. Yeah, look, it's been all talked about whether the race should have gone ahead. My main issue was the photo finish, and in fairness, Stuart mentioned on Racing TV, he called it beforehand. He said if there's a photo finish here, then the print is going to be too dark to be able to decipher who's won, and it was a photo finish. It was a close photo finish as well. And just chatting before we started here, Dan, about the race that LA Bell and Ishkara Lady that they contested at the November meeting in 2020. They went past the line together. Similar scenario, they had a photo finish. They couldn't decipher who'd won from the photo, and they announced a dead heat. I'd look at that race again today. It was way more clear-cut from watching the TV pictures that Ishkara Lady had actually almost certainly hit the line in front of LA Bell, but they called it dead heat because they couldn't determine the result from the photo finish. And this result was, to me, closer than that one was, and they called Cryptic Jim as the winner. He probably was the winner anyway, and I know Ben Pauling and Ben Jones, they didn't, who were trainer and rider of the runner-up respectively, they had no issue with it. So it's almost certainly the right result. And Cryptic Jim, was prominent from early, made a mistake at the final flight, and did well to get back up and get the better of Torres Bay. But I'm not like Matt will have the stats for the Classic Hurdle. I just thought that this was maybe below the level. Like last year, Potter's Charm won this race, and he had a rating of 146 going into the race, having won the Formby Hurdle. Cryptic Jim's rated 130, Torres Bay 132, Fortune Jimmy the third horse 129. So if this, I'm not sure this race is going to have a major impact on the Bearing Bingham or maybe on the Albert Bartlett, but it was I think that both horses, Cryptic Jim and Torres Bay, they'll probably have to improve if they're going to be a factor. Heads Up, I was disappointed with Heads Up. He's a horse that I like a lot. We've spoken about him before. Like, he was second in the Champion Bumper last season, and I thought his form this year has been working out really well. He finished second behind No Drama Descend in the Hyde Hurdle at the November meeting, having gone around the inside for most of the way. And he just didn't jump well. He was too keen through the early part of the race. Danny Mullins went over to ride him. It was his only ride at Cheltenham. And it just was a race that you have to put a line through for him. Maybe the delay wasn't a help to him. Maybe the soft ground wasn't a help. But for whatever reason, he just disappointed. And I'm hoping that he'll be able to bounce back at some point. But he was beaten by too far, I think, for it to be even close to his true running.
Yeah, Matt, hit us with the trend, and I'm guessing, just based on not just Donn, but a general vibe and watching the race itself, that it is a below par renewal, or what do you think?
I think it is, and I think what changed were two things. Firstly, Active Innocence with Withdrawn, who are the most exciting horse possibly in the race, and the next most exciting horse heads up, as Donn said, spoiled his chance by pulling hard. So I'd been in the camp that, oh yeah, some quite decent novices in Britain this year, and these races that used to be the strongest race, and this used to be the strongest novice hurdle typically run in Britain before the festival all season. And that's borne out by the old stats. So runners from the first 8 classic, 2 from 8 in the Bearing Bingham, 3 from 7 in the Albert Bartlett. Since when? 0 from 24 at the festival. 2007, Wichita Lyman beat Bearing Bingham 1-2, Messini's Maguire and Tidal Bay before winning the Albert Bartlett. 2013, At Fisher's Cross won this en route to the Albert Bartlett, beating the subsequent Bearing Bingham winner, the new one. So the reason that it's been a much less good trial is the obvious one. The Irish yards have dominated those 2 races. There have been 11 classics since At Fisher's Cross won, and the festival, British stables have won only 2 of the Bearing Binghams and 3 of the Albert Bartletts in that time. So I think it did cut up, and also you had the situation they finished in a bit of a heap, even though it wasn't an absolute crawl. So yeah, Cryptic Jim, I thought he won as they passed the post on TV. You got a bit of light, but in the wonderful world of 2026 British racing, we don't seem to be able to have the technology to be able to take a picture when it's gloomy that you can actually see, which is extraordinary. I'm very much in the camp that the race shouldn't have been run. And that's as someone who thinks that sometimes, particularly on the low sun issue, we're too cautious. But here we had a situation where, there was a bloke putting his whole arm in a hole in the ground that suddenly appeared. If you had an expert on drainage or the topography or whatever there who was saying, oh, I know what that is, that's it, and if you cover that area up, it's not a problem, it would have been fine. But when John Pullen was interviewed afterwards, it was clear they didn't know what the issue was at that point. They're still investigating it. Now, if you've got, say, a drainage issue where suddenly a big hole appears in the ground, I don't see how you can be confident another one won't appear 50 yards away in an hour's time, or half an hour's time. So we got away with it here, but it doesn't make it the right decision. Cryptic Jim, I thought, showed a really good attitude and battled it out. Taurus Bay was just having his 3rd start under rules, so you could argue he might improve past the winner. He's having his 7th start. That said, Taurus Bay looked a pretty professional racehorse, but it was the first time he'd really been off the bridle, so maybe he's an improver. But I think you're right, Daniel. I suspect, having got earlier in the week thinking, oh, this is going to be a really good race, it probably isn't going to have too much of an impact on the festival novice hurdles.
Okay, let's move on to the River Donn at Doncaster. And Donn, stick with you for this one. Keep the Dons running here. The River Donn, Doncaster, and to Donn McClean runners. We'll get to Matt's trend in a second. This is a great bit of placement from Paul Nolan. A, B, great ride from Sean O'Keefe, and probably led to what was a late gamble on Feud of a Dancer as well, to be fair.
Yeah, look, the Devil You Know was very good. As I mentioned earlier on, Sean O'Keefe was super on him. It was his first ride of the day, only his 2nd ride at Doncaster, I think. And he just plotted his course, went around the inside in the early part of the race, saving ground. And then when the pace started to increase on the run around the home turn, he moved him towards the outside, delivered his challenge down the near rail, probably on the best of the ground. And he ran out a good winner. But the Devil You Know, like he has really good back form. Like he finished 2nd behind Dr. Steinberg in the Grade 2 race at Navan on his last run. The time before that, he won his maiden hurdle at Gordon Park. He beat Skylight Hustle into 2nd place. Skylight Hustle came out and won his maiden hurdle by 20 lengths next time, and then won the Grade 1 Future Champions. That was his hurdle at the Leopardstown Christmas Festival. Maybe a little bit fortuitously when Top the Top fell at the final flight, but he stayed on really well, and who knows, he might have won anyway. But that was a big run. And the Passing Wife was back in 3rd, came out and finished 3rd in the Royal Bond hurdle next time, and won earlier on today at Punchestown as well. So the Devil You Know had good form going into the race, and he travelled so well through his race. The Country Code, in fairness, Rich Jefferson's horse travelled really well as well for James Bowen. He went around the inside. They both probably travelled as well as each other on the run to the 2nd last flight, but the closer they got to the last, the more apparent it became that Sean O'Keefe was probably holding on to more. And when he asked the Devil You Know to pick up, he picked up well. He's seen out the 3 miles really well. And good, really, really good performance by him. And it's going to be interesting to see where he goes next. It's only his 3rd run now over hurdles. He's obviously seen out this extended extended 3 mile trip really well. He handles soft ground well, and he's got pace for shorter trips. But the fact that he's able to see out the 3 mile trip, that opens up other options for him. And yeah, he's an exciting horse. And as you say, Dan, brilliant day for Paul Nolan and Sean O'Keefe.
Yeah, great story, to be honest with you, particularly with all that was going on in Cheltenham. A good Phil story at Doncaster. Matt, for you, I mean, the burning question, what next for the Devil? But start with the actual performance itself.
Yeah, and this hasn't been a strong trial for the Albert Bartlett. Runners won from 34. None of the 14 winners have done better than 4th. But I did think this was a stronger renewal than we've had for some time. And as Donn was saying, the Devil had a really good form with Skylight Hustle and Dr. Steinberg. And I misinterpreted that form at Navan. I thought that he actually might want to come back in trip. The ground had been very deep at Navan. They went sensibly. Steady pace, 115% finishing speed. Maybe he just got done for toe there by a horse Willie Mullins has said would really relish that very deep ground. So perhaps Dr. Steinberg's just a better horse. But having watched the River Donn now and having seen how well the Devil stayed out the 3 miles, then on a sound surface, I wouldn't say he was without a chance of reversing the Navan form. Back here on nice soft ground, you might say, he's patiently ridden, but travelled all over his rivals bar the runner-up from a long way out, and then asserted pretty readily from him as well. Really good performance, I thought, winning by 5 lengths and 13 lengths from the other market leaders, so the right horse is chasing him home. It wasn't stopping at the line, and they'd gone a decent gallop, so it looks like he's got the stamina for the Albert Bartlett. And that defeat of Skylight Hustle, Donn mentioned, was over 2 miles, so he's got tactical speed as well, and that's just what you need for the Albert Bartlett. It's wide open, as it usually is. 17.0 looks a bit big. He's definitely looks a good contender for that. And Country Code, as I said, ran a blinder here because he'd only run in a couple of small races over hurdles. Wasn't as battle-hardened as the winner. And so there's no reason for him to turn around the form that you can see in the Albert Bartlett, but there often isn't, and it does happen. That was the slowest ground he's run on, so perhaps a sounder surface will help. He's a lovely prospect, 41.0 for the Albert Bartlett, and not without a chance there either.
Okay, and we speak about this each and every year, but if you're new to the podcast, the Albert Bartlett, out of all the novice hurdles, is won by the biggest prices, so it is an open race that you could really just not pay attention to until decks. Why not 48-hour decks and beyond that? Let's go to the juvenile hurdle, and this was a good win for the Skeletons, Donn.
Yeah, good win. Maestro Conti did it well. Harry Skelton was good on him. He was patient. He brought him over towards the near side rail in the home straight, and he picked up well. It kind of opened up from one horse town, led them into the home straight, and Paul O'Brien brought him over towards the near side in order to obviously get the Sands rail, which is where you want to be ideally. But he didn't come the whole way across, which left a gap there for Harry Skelton to drive Maestro Conti through. And I'm sure he probably would have won anyway. Maestro Conti was probably the best horse in the race by a little way. He won by 2 lengths in the end. He probably had more in hand than that. But no, good performance. He's 3 for 3 in over hurdles. He won well at Christmas, or at Kempton over Christmas, his first run in Britain. So yeah, look, he's obviously the Triumph Hurdle is the race for him now. Probably going to have to improve again to beat Narciso and Mange too. The 2 big Irish juveniles. We'll know more about them after the spring juvenile hurdle at Leopardstown over the Dublin Racing Festival. But I thought Maestro Conti couldn't have done much more here than he did. One horse turn ran well. He led from early. He was only headed on the run and he kept on. And Manila Yoga, there's probably more to come from him as well. He was prominent early on and he kept on. He won an Academy hurdle at Fairyhouse when he was with John Nallen. Then he's joined Paul Nichols and he won well at Newbury, beat Active Innocence, who, as Matt was saying earlier on, was a non-runner from the last race, the Classic Hurdle. He probably didn't run up to as the market expected him to, but I still thought he ran well in defeat. He wasn't beaten that far, and I wouldn't just give up on Manila Yoga yet.
Yeah, Matt, hit us with your trend and your thoughts on the potential top 2, top 3 in this race.
Yeah, so as tends to be the case in the British trials, they often produce a top juvenile as the winner, but they tend to lack depth. And the trend is winners 3 from 16 in the Triumph, but losers are 0 from 34. And although the overall record of winners is fair, 9 of the last 12 finesse winners that ran in the Triumph went off favourite. They tended to be overbet, 9 favourites finishing 3-2-2, 3-6, 1-1, 4-3. Maestro Conti a bit weak on the day, good in the race, travelling strongly, a bit too strongly, quite confidently ridden. And Donn explained about what happened with Paul O'Brien not getting over to the rail and allowing Harry Skelton up the inside. So he got a dream run there. I agree with Donn. I think he was the best horse in the race anyway, but it would have been interesting to see, had he had to switch around, whether he would have still won. I suspect he probably would. He does need to take the occasion in the Triumph. A bit of a buzzy character. Faster pace might help him settle. So if he improves again, he's got a chance. He's about 10.0. Despite the terrible record of beaten horses in this, I wouldn't give up on One Horse Town. My normal instinct is Autumn Juvenile, found wanting as the season progressed, but I thought he was still improving here. And he was beaten a couple of lengths. His stamina looking to ebb away, conceding £2. So if he gets the Triumph on quicker ground, particularly if he's allowed to set a muddling pace, he might run well at a big price. He's 51.0. And as Donn said, Minella Jaeger beaten the well-touted Act of Innocence. He's getting £20 there. Back into favouritism here. He ran pretty well. He was hanging in the closing stages a bit, but he was getting weight from both those who finished in front of him. So that didn't do Act of Innocence's form any favours. He might be more next season's project. The first 5 finish, bit of a heap here, less than 5 lengths separating them, and hadn't crawled round. So that might make you think there isn't a Triumph horse in the finesse this year.
Okay, we will move on, and obviously we have the DRF to come as well, and the Triumph picture would tend to take shape from there, but usually quite late in the day as well, to be fair. Eyecatchers time, Dom. I know we covered work ahead. You've 2 more Eyecatchers from the weekend or from the last week.
Yeah, so work ahead I mentioned. Jordan's Cross, pretty obvious Eyecatcher, I thought, but I still think that even though he won the time for Novices Handicap Chase, that's always a good pointer to Cheltenham. I still think that it could be marked up on the bare form of the run. It was a race that wasn't run at a strong pace, 108% finishing speed. He was back in the field early on. He kind of came from mid-division, but his jumping was really good. The second and third were first and second from early, and he's the only one who was able to come from the back and go and win it. And look, it took him all of the run in to get up and beat Quebecois, but I thought he showed a really good attitude to go and do that. The last 5 winners of this race have either won or finished second in different races at the Cheltenham Festival. Jaguar won it last year. He got £7. He went from a mark of 132 to 139. He won the plate last year. Jordan's Cross has the option of the plate and the Novices Handicap Chase. I thought the Ultimate might be a better race for him. He's a real staying horse. Even Anthony Honeyball's trainer said that for next season he's looking at all those kind of good staying handicap chases, and he's shaped as a horse for a little while now, as if he might improve for going back up and trip. His stable companion, actually, Caduce Saint-Frey, was on my radar as well, and I thought he could have been marked up from it, but just of the 2, I just prefer Jordan's Cross. I think he's the one who's got the better potential to go and win at the Cheltenham Festival, while Caduce Saint-Frey is a horse worth keeping in mind as well. And the third horse from Eyecatchers is Annual Invictus, an 11-year-old, which was kind of bizarre to include as an Eyecatcher, but he was an Eyecatcher in the cross-country chase. For me, crucially, it was his first run in the cross-country chase, and we know that this is such a different track, and history tells you that horses can improve quite dramatically from their first run on the cross-country track to their next. This is only his 3rd run this season. He missed all of last season. He's a classy horse. He won the Great Yorkshire back in 2024. He finished second in the Bet365 Gold Cup behind Minella Cocooner, and he's won over hurdles at Cheltenham as well. So he goes well at the track, and he came from well back. It looked like they went a really strong pace, but the sections tell you that it wasn't an overly strong pace, and Annual Invictus was the only one who was able to make ground from the rear. He actually got up and got the better of Fine Lourdes for 4th place in the end. Lefebvre de Champs ran out an impressive winner, and like he obviously won well. But I thought Annual Invictus did well to get up for 4th. I think his saddle slipped as well. I think Freddie Gordon said afterwards that his saddle slipped. So given all of that, I think he's probably going to have to improve by an awful lot if he's going to win the cross-country chase. It's looking like a really warm cross-country chase this season, but I think he can run well in it, and maybe one to keep in mind for a place in the race.
Okay, yeah, Matt, hit us with your 3 Eyecatchers.
So the first one's from the Novice Handicap Chase, and I like the first 2 here. Agree everything Donn said about the winner. And Donn was alluding to the marks that horses have won off Jaguar £7. Simply the bets. Mr. Whittaker between £7 and £9. Even Vino Griego and Ping Pong Savola nearly defied £17 and £15 high marks after winning this in the plate. So don't be put off by the fact that the first two will have got a bit of a hike here. I used to do a preview night each year with the old handicapper Phil Smith, who always said, why would you run 140 novice in the Jack Richards and risk running into Aplutar when you could take on exposed handicappers in the plate? And that would be the race I'd ideally like to see these two in. My eye catcher is Quebecois, and I think Paul Nicholls actually thinking about stepping him up in trip to the Ultima. He was 140 rated novice hurdler at the end of last season, been disappointing in 2 chase starts over 3 miles, jumping not passing muster. Dropped back to an extended 2.5 here on a left-handed track. Jumping was a revelation, really slick, just got done in the nod off 135. So just wonder whether he actually wants to be going 3 miles, and particularly a strongly run 3 miles as the Ultima tends to be. Paul has got Regent Stroll for the novice handicap chase. So it'd be interesting to see, but he's definitely one I think is well handicapped. Rather more obvious one from the cross country in the winner for Vory de Champdou. And the reason for putting him up is just the nature of that race. He's won off 8.5 by 8.5 lengths off 149 here. Now, if cross country races were like conventional handicaps, he might have blown his mark for the festival, but they're not. The track had to be shoehorned into the middle of Prestbury Park in the 90s, so tight, a few opportunities to gallop until the business end, all about keeping on an even keel and then being able to sprint. And as Donn said, they went a better pace than they sort of do, but you still had a very high finishing percentage. So weight matters much less. Pace to stick with the course specialists. 4 of the 12 renewals of the festival went to the top weight. I suspect for Vory de Champdou won't even have to carry that because Stumptown is likely to run. But he's in great form with the blinkers back on, loves the track, goes on any ground, which is important in this. There's no drainage out there. So they have found a way to water, but it's logistically very difficult. So the ground's much more natural than on the conventional tracks. Versatility as to underfoot conditions, a big plus. He's 7.0 and a pretty likely winner of that. And then finally, Spanish Harlem in the Thyestes. Heartbreak for 23-year-old Sean Cleary-Farrell, unseated at last when set to win the big race. He made a mistake, as we all do. And most of our mistakes are low profile and relatively few people notice them. Occasionally they're high profile and you have to dust yourself down and go again, which I'm sure he will do. He's a good young jockey. And Spanish Harlem had clouted a couple of fences already on the way round. He looks a really well handicapped horse if he puts it all together. He just didn't get into a jumping rhythm at all at the Coral Gold Cup either. So the brush through fences of the Grand National really suit these classy stayers who get caught out hitting the top of the big park fences. Tiger Roll, Iron Maximus. Now, 10 of the last 11 national winners were in their first or second season chasing. But Willie did say in the autumn when he won the Kerry National that Spanish Harlem had taken a long time to come right. Ran off 150 at Gore and it's up to an Irish mark of 154 now. But whilst he probably higher again at Aintree, the first 3 home last year ran off between 163 and 167. So it's a race for graded class horses now. If there's going to be a third season chaser winning the National this year, Spanish Harlem might be it. He's 41.0 and worth keeping an eye on.
Yeah, that's the Thyestes, Donn, which was dramatic. Watched it live on RT, and now is the hour. I thought Mark Walsh was going to a massive win in the JP colours, and I know he's getting a bit of stick online. I don't think he could have done much more. He did try and ride his horse out the best, but now is the hour. Ended up somehow winning that race.
Yeah, I think better times ahead he was kind of didn't have a lot of luck in running either. The loose horse kind of came across him a little bit at the second last, didn't he? And he still looked a likely winner. Now is the hour, just quickened up on the far side. And yeah, it looked brilliant for Owen Staples. He's we've spoken about Owen Staples before here. He's down to £5 now, but he's got plenty of winners left on with his £5 claim, and he's worth every pound of that £5. He was so good, and now is the hour. I echo Matt's sentiments on Sean Cleary-Farrell, like just for that to happen at the final fence in the Thyestes, and he'd been so good in him the whole way around. And just one of those things, just put it down to experience. And as Matt said, no doubt he'll bounce back. He's a young rider with his future ahead of him, and he's a good rider as well. So, yeah, it's just one of those things that happened. But that was the hour. It was very good. Like, what a way to get off the mark over fences. He'd never won a chase before. He threatened and he'd run well in defeat in big races. Remember, he fell at I think it was the second last he fell in the National Hunt Chase last year behind Eddie Calor, when he probably would have finished second behind him. And he's run well in some of those big staying chases. So to go and win a the Thyestes chase and that's your first chase win. No, big win for him. Big day for Gavin Cromwell as well. Had a treble on the day, straight off the cold list onto the hot list. And yeah, it was a real race of attrition, wasn't it? Like only 5 horses finished. She could be anything. Looked like she was traveling well into the home straight, and she just couldn't go on when better times ahead. And now as the hour went on, but yeah, look, it was a Thyestes chase. We know how good a pointer the Thyestes is to the Grand National, and yeah, wouldn't disagree with anything Matt said about Spanish Harlem.
Absolutely agree on that. And yeah, Gavin Cromwell had a winner there as well today at the Punchestown Matchbook sponsored card there, and obviously we're recording this on Monday, so I haven't been able to go through that in depth, but there could be 1 or 2 Cheltenham clues there, so very much worth watching a lot of those replays back. We'll move on to the Stayers Hurdle. We're going to cover this from an Ante-Post perspective. We're trying to cover races that if someone's watching this the week of Cheltenham, that 90% of things are still the same. Let's just go through prices. And Matt, I'm going to start with you then. Teahupoo 3.15 versus 2.75 incidentally on the sports book. So if you've already found a bet there already by default. Honesty Policy 5.4, Bob Ollinger 9.0, Mash 9.6. We have Impotois at 16.0, Ballyburn 21.0, and 30.0-ish and bigger the rest. So Matt, a lot of ways we can go. Maybe a couple of trends, maybe set up the race for us, and we can go through it in a little bit of depth.
Yeah, so Teahupoo sets the standard, and Gordon runners finished 0825p 131523. So it was a race he didn't used to take that seriously. Now a big priority for him. Got a very strong hand. He's a very classy horse for Stayers. Won 3 Hatton's Grace hurdles, but that race much more of a champion hurdle trial than a Stayers hurdle trial. He's the only one of 10 winners who've run in the Stayers to win it. 4 out of the 6 have won the champion hurdle. In his younger days, I thought he was a bit of a suspect there in a strongly run championship event at 3 miles. Whilst David Russell's injury didn't help, he looked to get outstayed in the Stayers 2023, won the following year, got out sprinted by Bob Ollinger last year. So it may be that now 9, he really stays the 3 miles strongly now. So when you're looking at the division, how good a horse is going to need to be to win this year's Stayers? Teahupoo is a good benchmark. His winning RPR 165. That's 19th equal out of the 25 winning ratings this century. His best is 168. Is he really going to be improving this season? His 6th over hurdles, just having had his 21st race? I doubt it. I think he ran to his best form at Leopardstown and no more. So classy horse though he is, I don't think he sets the bar that high. The division's been crying out for some new blood. Now we've got it. I think he's very beatable. You've got to want to take him on at a short price, I think. The market leader is the one I'd be against, the course specialist, Bob Ollinger, who sprinted off a steady gallop to win last year's renewal age 10. Ran on through beaten horses on his seasonal reappearance when conceding race fitness to Teahupoo in the Christmas hurdle. If it were to turn into a sprint again, then even at 11, he'd have a shout. But I can't imagine Jack Kennedy, for one, is going to let that happen again. So I want to take him on. Impotois, late developer. This is his 4th season hurdling. It's not unusual for horses to come through the handicap ranks to win the Stayers. Flooring Porter, Paisley Park, all of that, Big Bucks, My Way to Sales and Bacchanal all did it. But all bar Big Bucks were 2nd season hurdlers. So although he probably wasn't suited by the ground in the Cleve on Saturday, I think that might have exposed him. In particular, he didn't look to come up the hill all that well. Maybe that was Nicky Henderson and the soft prep that we talked about earlier. But he looks one I could take on. And maybe he was beaten by a future star in Marchand too, who had parallels with Emma Lavelle's 2019 winner Paisley Park, who bombed in the Albert Bartlett, won handicaps next season of 140, 147, Long Walk, Cleve and Stayers. And Marchand too ran a better race in the Albert Bartlett, was 7th. He's won handicaps off 129, 138. Those wins are off a fair bit low ratings, but to some extent that reflects changes in handicap methods now. He did bomb out in between, but Emma's horses weren't running well at the time. The theory is Harry Cobden said he prefers sound surface. So given it was tacky, tiring ground in the Cleve, even though he was getting £6, he won pretty easily. I was quite impressed visually with that. And a trend for him is that runners from the previous year's Albert Bartlett, 3 from 19, big profits of that, and none have tried since 2021, tend to go chasing now. So how good a trial it is could go under the radar. Penhill did the double, Lisnagar Oscar was 5th, Paisley Park 13th. So always forgive a poor run in the Albert Bartlett. And I think the key here is what I alluded to earlier, it's been a substandard division for some time. Deeper now, but lacks stars. And that's illustrated by 9 of the first 16 Stayers Hurdle winners, won by horse running to an RPR of 170 or more. None of the last 9 have. So sooner or later, we're going to get a star. And if there is one, I think it's Honesty Policy. He ran his first race of any kind only 15 months ago in a point, just over a year since his rules debut. Given that extraordinary the progress he made in the first 4 months of last year, beaten on hurdling debut, won a couple of small races, and then won the Grade 1 Mersey at Aintree. Now, the strength of that form is open to question, but the form at over 3 miles at Punchestown, when just edged out by Jasmine DeVoe, it was a cracking effort against a much more battle-hardened opponent. And Honesty Policy had been on the go since October, so possibly wasn't at his best at the end of a long season. When he came back, conceding race fitness in the long walk, looked to blow up, got his second win, running on strongly to be just a length and a half behind Eyecatchers. Soir. You watch that and you think, gosh, he needed the run, but he showed loads of stamina. His final furlong was quicker than any of the others. So what had worried me after the long walk about his chances was Gordon was talking about going direct to the Stayers. If that was the plan, you're worried he'd be too keen again, and keen horses rarely win the Stayers. But earlier last week, Gordon said the plan was a Boyne Hurdle, unless the ground's bottomless. Ideal preparation. So I think Honesty Policy showing pretty good signs that he is progressing into a horse who could be a cut above what I think is a substandard crop of Stayers. Around 5.4, I wouldn't put you off that, because I think he could be a lot closer to Cheer Hooper in the market by the time the flag goes up.
Okay, yeah, interesting take on that. Gordon obviously having the top 2 in the market. Donn, take us through the top of the market that Matt's done there and where you sort of land, and if you agree ultimately with him.
Yeah, like Matt, that's a brilliant analysis of Matt's there. He's covered an awful lot of ground there that I wouldn't have covered. But yeah, look, I think it's an interesting race as we stand. I agree with a lot of what Matt said, actually. Teahupoo, like he's such a stalwart, such an honest to God staying hurdler. Like if the ball hopped a little bit better for him, he'd be a 3-time Stayers Hurdle winner by now. He's won one of them, was outspeeded by Bob Ollinger last year under a brilliant ride by Rachel Blackmore, and coming on here, I think he's probably in as good a form this year as he's been. Like his Hatton's Grace Hurdle win when he battled on, just got home from Ballyburn directly afterwards. The common consensus was that Ballyburn would reverse placings, but that probably didn't take into account the solidity of Teahupoo, and he went and did it again at Leopardstown. And interestingly, Gordon Elliott and Rob Corbrine Atchison, they kind of, the last couple of years, they said he's best fresh, so we'll go straight from the Hatton's Grace Hurdle to Cheltenham. This year, Gordon said quite early on, even before the Hatton's Grace Hurdle, I think that they might campaign him a little bit differently this year. So he's taken in the Christmas Hurdle, and that's why not. It's there to win. He's still fresh going to Cheltenham. The Galmoy Hurdle was an option, but just to go there 3 miles on heavy ground on Théaste's Chase Day, it's just not really the ideal prep for a Stayers Hurdle. So Teahupoo was going straight to Cheltenham, and yeah, look, he's the standard setter. Bob Ollinger, like he won it last year as a 10-year-old before Cyr de Burley. It was a young horse's race, the Stayers Hurdle. I think Crimson Embers was the last horse in double figures to win a Stayers Hurdle. That's back in the 80s. So before Cyr de Burley, but then Cyr de Burley won at 11. Bob Ollinger's now won at 10. He's 11 now going on. And actually, he ran better than I thought he would at Christmas. He finished second behind Teahupoo. And he's going to be better on probably better ground at Cheltenham. And that Henry de Bromhead is going to train him for the Stayers Hurdle. That's obviously his ultimate goal. So I think he'll be a player as well. But the Yellow Clay was a horse that I thought would be a player early in the season. He's just been disappointing. I thought Gordon Elliott would have a strong hand led by the Yellow Clay. He's got a strong hand without the Yellow Clay. He was beaten in the Lismullen Hurdle by Colonel Mustard, which you probably could have allowed him that, because the ground was really soft. And even after Colonel Mustard went up and won his race, he showed a lot of grit and determination to get back up for second. But you really would have wanted a better performance last time in the Christmas Hurdle. He finished well down the field behind Teahupoo. So that's not his running. On his form last year, his second behind the New Lion in the Bearing Bingham, that brings him right into the Stayers Hurdle picture for a horse who's got stamina over further and who would, anyway, at the start of this season, looked like he might improve for stepping up in trip, but he just doesn't seem to be the same horse this year. He's going to have to bounce back what he's going to do, whether he goes directly to the Stayers Hurdle, or Gordon even mentioned at his media day the other day that he might look at a handicap for him. So just the yellow clay. He just hasn't gone forward this season like I hoped he would. By contrast, Honesty Policy has, and that run in the long walk hurdle, as Matt mentioned, that was a hell of a run. On his first run since he finished second behind Jasmine DeVoe in the 3 mile novices hurdle at the Punchestown Festival. Like, he was such a progressive horse last year. Won his maiden in February, and then went on and won the Turners, or the Mersey hurdle at Aintree over 2.5 miles. So a grade 1 race. So look, he's such an improving horse. He's only 6. He's the right age. As Matt was saying, that the plan now, Boyne hurdle onto the Stayers, perfect. So he's going to be having his 3rd run of the year in the Stayers hurdle, all going well. So for me, he's a massive player in the race. And Mashon too, I thought he put his hat right into the ring there on Saturday. He was seriously impressive. They didn't go a great pace, but he quickened off it well. And as Matt said, that Haydock run was just too bad to be true. It was at Haydock as well, which is totally different to Cheltenham. He's a proven horse at Cheltenham. He beat actually the winner of the Haydock race at Cheltenham. And then he's went back there on New Year's Day, won again, and now he's won a Cleve hurdle, and he's right on track now for the Stayers. Like, he does have to improve again, as Matt mentioned. Paisley Park, when he won at Haydock in November, he won off a mark of 137. He was rated 156 when he won the Cleve. Mashon 2 is rated 144. So he's going to have to find, on his form before the Cleve hurdle, he has to find about £20. Obviously, he doesn't have to find that now. He's gone and won the Cleve hurdle in a career best performance. So to me, given his Cheltenham form, and before Saturday, we didn't know that he could handle soft ground. He's Bison too, so there's a good chance that he would, but he could be even better back on better ground that he'll probably get in March. And for me, as things stand at the moment, Honesty Policy and Mashon too, they'd be my 2 against the field.
Okay, both the guys taking on Ante-Post. Match, is that the bigger prizes? Any interest in runners or potential definitely going to run? I mean, we touched on Feed a Dancer at the top of the show. If you're watching this YouTube video separately, she could potentially go Stayers, could go Pretems, could go Mares. So unsure. And even one I was thinking of after Cromwell's comments a couple of weeks ago, you briefly mentioned Florian Porter earlier in the show. I didn't expect him to rock up in the Cotswold then, so I haven't seen any quotes after. I might have missed them though, whether Stayers is still the plan, or maybe they're going, I don't know, Grand National or something with Florian Porter. But yeah, a lot of ways you can go with some of the bigger prices.
Yeah, and in recent years, with so many shocks, listen, Oscar 51.0, Sarabelle 34.0, I tend to try and look for something. The division's a lot deeper now, and sometimes you can find a horse who hasn't been that primed for the grade 1s earlier in the season, who improves a lot at Cheltenham. I've really struggled this year. I think Florian Porter, the plan, as I understand it, is the Grand National, and there are only 29 entries. Mystical Power at the start of the year, it was very interesting that Willie and Paul Townend were talking about how well he was going before he lost his action last year. He's shown absolutely nothing in terms of form, 67.0, but it'd be interesting to see what the vibes are for him. We've covered Peter the Dancer. It's got to squeak at a huge price. The Yellow Clay, as Don said, there's now talk of a handicap, and it might be that the Coral Cup would be a good race for him because horses running off high marks have a really good record in that. But if they get him back after that grueling race in the Lismullen and he gets decent ground, then he could be one for non-runner, no bet. But no, it's not a race, to my surprise, that there are a lot of long shots I fancy. And so, Honesty Policy at around 5.4, I think is a decent bet.
Yeah, Don, it's a good point just to finish up there. And I mean, Cabrel de Matan's gone Aintree as far as I know, when we covered a couple of weeks ago. It's a good point I think Matt makes on the division being a touch deeper now, and not necessarily in terms of numbers, but just the top of the market. There seems to be, even what we talked about, 4 potential winners there in single figure prices. So therefore a long shot is probably more a longer shot than it would previously. But before I forget, a Mystical Power is actually 180 on Matchbook, Matt. So you can have a little bit of that if you want, just in case.
Yeah, no, it's a division that doesn't tend to change too much from one year to the next in general. Like, it does foster repeat winners. So Ante-Post, like, he's been the standard bearer for 3 years now. But as Matt was saying earlier on, now we have a 6-year-old in Honesty Policy, we have the 7-year-old Mashon 2 coming up to take on the 9-year-old Ante-Post, which is still young enough to win a Stayers Hurdle, the 11-year-old Bob Ollinger. And you can throw Impose Trois in there as well into the up and coming Stayers, even though he's 8. But Ballyburn was that at the start of the season, but He hasn't gone forward like it looked like he should, or he might. Excuse me.
Yeah, 21.0.
Yeah. Cabrera Matan, he would be interesting if he took his chance in the race, but that's not certain.
Yeah, no worries at all. We've got bigger prices there in the Matchbook Betting Exchange, and I touched on it. If you want a bit of fun with Mystical Power, it is the benefits of the exchange. Back to lay options, who knows? But you can check out all the guys' thoughts further on the Matchbook Cheltenham Trail. But great stuff, lads. A long show there. Well, we're covering from Matt and Donn. I think the voice going near the end, Donn, shows that 75 minutes is officially the limit on the Matchbook Cheltenham Trail, mate. So we will keep it to that. We've got the DRF next week. I just wanted. I mean, we're finishing up here, guys. Don't worry. But Donn, like, if they do start looking at the weather forecast, if they do start watering that track, Leopardstown's only 15 minutes down the road from me. I will go over there myself and turn it off, because we are getting exceptional rain coming in the next week. It's just going to change the shape of the DRF in a line or two. It's going to be soft ground. It could be a proper soft Irish Gold Cup just based on this rain, like, you know.
Yeah, no, it's soft ground all over, Dan. Sure, you know, the inspections at tracks all over the country here and in Britain, cancellations and inspections. But yeah, it's a factor. It definitely is a factor. We're going to have to consider ground. Yeah, like, you know, Galloping the Show's the first horse I think about. Like, we know that he loves soft ground, and he was beaten obviously in the Savills Chase over Christmas, but on softer ground with that run under his belt, he could have it in his favour again at the Dublin Racing Festival. But yeah, no, it's definitely a factor. And I'd say you're right. I'd say with the rain we're having at the moment, it's soft ground at Leopardstown. I'd be surprised if it wasn't soft now come the weekend.
Yeah, Matt. So just so I was listening to rain during our show here, so it is. I promise you, it's raining, and tomorrow's gonna be biblical. A lot of further rain on Thursday. Look, Leopardstown, out of all the tracks in Ireland, is probably in the top 3 anyway to dry out. But it changes the shape this year for sure. I mean, we won't have any non-runners because of the ground, at least good ground anyway.
You certainly won't be getting good ground. We've had 8 DRFs. The chase course has never been slower than soft, and the hurdles course never slower than soft to heavy. So there is a possibility, I think, on the hurdles course of genuinely heavy ground, depending on how much rain comes. So as you say, that will be different. And if you're looking at, say, the juvenile race, where Narcisco Hall looked terrific at Christmas, but you've then suddenly got something that could be a complete slog, would you want to be piling into a short price suddenly?
No.
So I do think it will be a case of looking for a few swimmers, particularly on the hurdles track at the weekend. Yeah,
stay tuned. We will have DRF preview with Tom Stanley later in the week, and the guys will be back next week to review the DRF. We won't cover a Cheltenham race because you've seen the time issues already, but I know a lot of you guys really enjoy the analysis, the deep dive into a lot of these races, so we're going to continue making this content right up to the Cheltenham Festival. Enjoy the week's race, and particularly enjoy Leopardstown. I'll be going hopefully both days. I'm very much looking forward to it, and we'll chat to you next week. Bye-bye.